I'm reading a biography of a 11th century writer named Abelard. It's from research from my next book, which is basically called, right now, it's called The Laws of Human Nature. Um, and it's one of the most famous love stories that has ever happened. This monk and this woman that fell in love in their letters, and it's illustrating an idea that I have for my next book that has to do with male-female relations and the weirdness between men and women. So that's what I'm reading right now. And just prior to that, I was reading a book about the crash of '08. I know these seem so totally different, but there's the next book has a lot of things about the crash of '08 because I think of it as sort of an epic story of human stupidity that has just never changed over thousands of years. So I'm heavily researching that subject. Wow. Well, my girlfriend and I counted, and we got to somewhere like in the 50s, and then I figured that there were things I just can't remember. So 80 is just an estimate. But really, I never was happy at any of the jobs I had. I think the longest I worked at a place was 11 months. And I got tired of seeing the same people, and things got boring for me. And basically, I wanted to be a writer. So I wanted to try all sorts of different things. I tried Hollywood, I tried journalism, I traveled all over Europe, I did all sorts of weird, odd jobs there. And because I felt like that's how you become a writer, is you have experiences. And it ended up being the right thing because by the time I wrote the 48 Laws of Power, I'd seen everything. I'd seen the most manipulative, evil kind of power moves in Hollywood and all the other jobs that I've had. I had some really bad Hollywood television jobs, but I don't even want to go into that. I worked at a detective agency for a while, and that was really depressing because my job was to find people who had skipped town but hadn't paid their bills. And it was all on the telephone, and it was all about deceiving and manipulating. So they would give you scripts about how to call people, relatives in Wisconsin, and trick them into thinking you were a friend of the family. It was so dirty and ugly, and I was really good at it. So I hated that job. And my best job, I don't know, when I was 21, I worked in a hotel in Paris. And it was pretty exciting because it was a hotel where all the models would stay when they came to Paris, and I was young and never seen anything like that. It was a totally new world. And there's a whole other story associated with it I'm not going to bore you with, but it was a very, very exciting time of my life. And I met a lot of really weird characters that subsequently have gone into my books, particularly really inspired the Art of Seduction. And the point I make in Mastery is that the difference between people who are successful and not are those who are successful seem to know from age of 7 or 8, maybe older, they're very in tune with what they love. I compare it to a voice inside their head. Not literally a voice, but it's something saying, you really are drawn to this subject. And they hear it throughout their lives. For me, it was writing and books since I was a kid. Anytime I deviated from that love and went into something else, I just was so unhappy. I knew that I wasn't doing the right thing. And so it's just like this voice that keeps drawing you back to what you really, really love. Well, it was a positive experience in that it's like you're young and you're full of energy and you want to learn and you're around all these other people and you're going to parties. And for me, I'm older. I was taking drugs. I don't deny that, but part of my past. So it was like a social thing. That's the thing I loved about college was it was a social thing. And you were learning, and there were some classes that were good, but it has nothing to do with the real world. I mean, there is a vague link that I mentioned before between the discipline that languages and classics taught me, and that's true. But when it comes to politicking and dealing with people and working with other people and dealing with pressure and stress and money, college just teaches you nothing really. I mean, even if you go to business school, and there are many, there are professions where you have to go to college. If you're going to be a civil engineer, electrical engineering, et cetera. So of course that's different. But dealing with the real world is just so completely different. The set of skills, the whole mentality, the mindset, you have to make a 180-degree shift. And I think people really, really go wrong in that making that shift. They think things are just, it's going to be the same kind of environment. I mentioned in Mastery that college gives you a kind of passive attitude towards learning where, it's the professor telling me what to do and then I have to quickly write an essay at the last minute. Whereas the real world, it's very active. You're doing things, you're learning by doing, you're practicing, you're making mistakes, you're being judged, you're getting feedback. You have to make a total shift in your mind. And if you don't, you're in a lot of trouble. But if I were talking to someone who's 18 or 19 who wanted to go, who felt like he or she was an entrepreneur, I would say, well, maybe don't go. Maybe don't go waste all that money. Maybe go and start your business up instead of going to business school when you're 20 years old. Just start your business and you're going to learn in 2 years. It'll probably fail, but you'll learn in 2 years a million times more than you'll ever learn in business school. If you want to be a journalist or a writer, write. You don't need school for those things, particularly with the amount of debt that people are going to in these days. You do have options, and one option, and newspapers, I just read recently that's increasingly young people are reconsidering the whole idea of going to the university. Well, I want everyone to read it so I can, make a lot of money. No, that's not the main reason. The people who will benefit the most are those who are like between the ages of 18 and 30. The idea is that I've been studying the subject of excellence, success for many, many years. And since the books have come out, I've been a consultant for various powerful people. So I've seen a lot, and I've noticed a particular pattern that powerful, successful people reach, an intelligence that I call mastery. You know something so well that it's like you don't even have to think anymore. It's at your fingertips. Like this guy was setting up the lights. He's obviously a master of that, or he will be soon. You've had so many hours of practice and experience in doing something, or you eventually with interviewing and all of your other things, that you reach a whole other level. And I wanted to debunk the idea that it had anything to do with genetics or talent or education or whether your parents had a lot of money or anything like that. It's the fact that you love what you're doing and you go through a process. So I wanted to show the reader this process. And anybody can do it. It has nothing to do with where you went to school. And as an example in the book, I interviewed 9 contemporary masters, as well as go into the biographies of great historical masters. And one of the contemporary people I interviewed was a woman named Temple Grandin, who was born with autism. And she has since become a very well-known professor of animal studies and a researcher in autism itself. And the idea is if someone born with autism can reach what I consider this level of mastery, then there's really no excuse for anybody out there that they can't do it. So I'm going to delineate for you a very clear process. It's not easy. It requires that going through those 10,000 hours that a lot of people have heard of. There are no shortcuts. It involves some pain, but pain is good. If you go through this process, something incredible will happen. The earlier you begin, the better. The earlier you wake up and realize that if your parents said, okay, you need to go into law or medicine because you can make money, the earlier you realize that that is a mistake, that is a waste of your life if it's not what you love, the earlier that you realize I must head in this direction because this is something that I feel personally connected to and can also make a living at, the better you are in life because your most creative years are when you're younger. It's pretty much shown in the sciences that after the age of 36, very few people make any great discoveries. The best and most creative and innovative business people are always generally in their late 20s, early 30s. You've got more energy, you're more focused, you don't have the distractions of family, kids, you don't start getting conservative with your ideas, you're more experimental, You're just more alive in so many ways. The earlier you connect with this process that I'm describing, the better you are off, the better off you'll be. It doesn't mean that when you're in your 30s or 40s, you can't make a great change and follow the process, but it's so much better if you really connect with it when you're 18 to 20. So that's the people, the core, the hardcore that I'm really trying to reach. Well, there's differences and then there's not differences. So, the brain is the same. The brain evolved over the course of millions of years. So I try to make the point that, what Da Vinci was going through the process there's a template there, and it's the same because our brains haven't really changed in an evolutionary sense in 400 or 500 years. On the other hand, the circumstances are different, and people now live in a world where there's many more distractions, so it's harder to do that kind of focus that I was mentioning. So in some ways it's a little bit harder, and the people that I've interviewed are really good at shutting out all of the distractions of the world. That's sort of what separates them. Every single one of them. Paul Graham, you know Paul Graham? Paul doesn't have a smartphone. He doesn't spend time on the internet. He's extremely focused. The woman Yoki Matsuoka, she does all of her writing with a pen and paper. She's not sitting there day in and day out on the computer checking her Facebook or Twitter page or whatever. I could go through all of them that way. Steve Jobs is sort of the ultimate icon of mastery of our era. And he said the only thing that's differentiated me from everyone else was my level of focus. I could take a problem and I could focus on it and burrow into it, and everybody else was so distracted. He knew how to close his door, get away from his wife, his kids, everyone, and just focus. So all of these people have to overcome the intense distractions in our world, and they're able to do it. On the other hand, what you can get with a click on the internet, with a Google search, compared to what Da Vinci had to do, or a scientist in the 19th or 20th century, is absolutely astounding. So what you have at your fingertips, the knowledge, the things that you can connect and learn about, the potential for learning skills is out of this world. So if you're able to overcome the distracting elements that are, my girlfriend and I compare it to if you ever watch a basketball game and you see the opposing team shooting a free throw, and everyone behind him in the stands are all going like this with those big, trying to distract him. There's like hundreds of people. That's what the world is like now. You've got thousands of people waving those things. You've got so many distractions. If you're able to overcome that and be a person that can focus, you have this like wealth of information and knowledge and ability to acquire skills that nobody 100 years ago, 20 years ago could dream about. So those are the two differences of masters nowadays and in the past. They're people that are able to overcome the distractions, and they're able to exploit the information explosion that we have for in the right way, and learn things that nobody else could learn before. So that ability, I tell people, the future lies with those who know how to connect, make connections between different fields of knowledge, between science and business. One of the most successful businesses on the planet is Google. Two men who have absolutely zero background in business. None. They did happen to bring in Eric Schmidt, who had a business background. Their background is sciences. They made an incredible connection between science and business. They brought their scientific background to business and created a monster of a company that is structured in a way that no other business is structured. The future belongs to people who connect different fields in very creative ways. And now we have the ability to do that through the internet and other things, which nobody in the past had, if you're able to overcome those distracting elements that I mentioned.